Guys, I know we're a little bit down in our feelings because the United States did not beat Canada in the final of the Four Nations face-off. But let's jump into this right here with PK Subban ripping into the NBA. And right now, hockey's kind of having a moment, you guys. Like a lot of eyes on hockey, and it's such a contrast between the way that the NHL and hockey handled their All-Star break weekends or All-Star break time in the NBA. So let's play this clip from Subban here.
You can step on an NBA floor and go through the emotions. You can't do that in hockey. You can't. Like the culture of our sport, you have to play it with passion. You have to be willing to fight. You have to be willing to leave it on the ice. That's what fans are investing in. It's not just based on the skill and talent. It's based on the pride, honor, playing for the guy next to you. I got a question for the NBA players. What the hell are you playing for? What are you playing for? It's not about the money. You make all the money. What, you're injured? Well, there's a difference between being hurt and injured. Are you hurt or are you injured? There's a difference. In hockey, we play hurt. We play injured. That is the culture of the sport. It's always been that way. So you want to talk about the business, the CBA, fans get all of that. But what do fans resonate with? They resonate with what's real. You got to fight sometimes for your country. You got to compete. You got to go out there and leave it on the ice because those people are paying the price of admission.
That's like ripping across the internet right now, and rightfully so. I mean, Subban just killed it right there. Really putting the spotlight on the difference between these two sports right now. And it's so interesting what he said. He was talking about how one of the best defensemen in the world was not even able to be in the lineup. Like one of the stars, but still just the culture of the game. It doesn't matter who is actually going out there on the ice. The culture is that everyone is going to be playing so passionately every single night. Scott, what are your thoughts on this takeaways from here?
Dude, PK went in and he said everything that I think all fans are feeling, right?
Yeah.
But he articulated it in a way that was just nailing it. And that's why people love football so much. And people are now finally getting introduced to the NHL. Not that it hasn't been there hasn't been a big fandom, especially in the States. That's been a thing for quite some time. It's just now starting to get far more eyeballs on it because there is that passion, that fight, that drive within the actual people who play the sport. We're not seeing that in the NBA. We're not seeing the next man up mentality as you're speaking to, as he was speaking to with the top defenseman being out. Like, the dude who came and filled his spot was playing with just as much passion, if not more, because he was fighting for that spot. He wants to take down the guy who's at the pinnacle, and he wants to fight for his country, fight for his team, and literally and figuratively in the game of gameplay. So it's like, dude, there's so much to what he's saying that's ringing true, and I feel like it's just part of. It's part of the cultural shift, I get the sense, within Americans, or at least the hearkening back to something that we seemingly have lost over the past decade. And I think NHL hockey is absolutely satiating that desire to get back to something like that.
You know what I think the solution is here for the NBA? Let the players literally fight on the like they do in hockey. I know you don't have any gloves to throw off, but get out there, let these boys just throw some hands, and that'll get people engaged and excited. No, but will you throw up this tweet right here, Scott, that I'm highlighting? This has been so massive for the sport because I mean, just what we said there, it is. Here's for those just listening. This is what the tweet says. I can't imagine any sport in my lifetime that recaptured imaginations, built new passions, and found new fans like this tournament. It just doesn't happen. I feel like a kid watching sports again, just pure passion and love for the game. So well done at the NHL. And I mean, that's just a fantastic way of putting it. And that's why, this is kind of like an inflection point for hockey. There's like certain moments in sports and culture where some things like this can be like looked at as a tipping point. We kind of saw it also in the WNBA with Caitlin Clark coming in this past year.
Oh yeah.
Really just bringing all these eyeballs. Sometimes it takes a superstar, or it takes a certain cultural moment. And that's kind of what's happening with hockey right here. What do we think that the NBA has what it takes to revitalize that energy and that passion that has disappeared over the last 15 years?
Yeah, I think they have it. I think they have it within them because MJ was actually that guy who infused just the next level of fandom and took the sport to to the next level. There's always that opportunity, especially when it's happened in the past. Like the greatest indicator of future success is past success and how you go about doing that. So there is a chance that the NBA can correct it, but I feel as though that has to come from the players. And what PK was talking about right there is all of the passion, everything comes from within the locker room and on the ice, and it comes from the drive and dedication of those players. And until we get a new generation or couple rounds of new sort of mentality in the players in the NBA, I don't think any rule change or anything along those lines is really going to fix what's going on right now, because it's so deep seated.
You want to see great players, how they persevere through injury. How do they play with injury? You know, you look at like the way Kobe played with injuries. Tom Brady plays through injury. Everybody that's considered a great looking back at their career, they've battled through injuries and just goes, you know, like Kobe talking about, maybe there's a kid who's never seen me play in the audience that night. I'm going to go out and play. Like that mentality is completely gone. It's still in football. It's still in hockey, as we're seeing, but that's what NBA needs to get back to.
Mike, are you sound a little biased for playing through injury because you are performing through injury today?
Are you talking about my cast? Oh. Thanks for asking, actually. I'm glad you noticed.
Mikey has
got to get in the shot as much as possible.
You're doing great. You're doing great. You're going to get some sympathy letters sent from the viewers. Yeah, I mean that's exactly what it is. And also, we talked about how we don't really like this culture in the NBA of, ooh, all these guys are buddy. They're all friends. You know, you see Steph and LeBron on the court before the game dapping each other up. It's like, hey, I want you guys to be against each other and have some emotion while playing.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is here, and I'm going to throw up this tweet, is that in this Four Nations face-off tournaments, I mean, you know, these are all NHL guys. A lot of them actually play together in their actual professional franchise. This tweet says, on the hockey game USA for Canada, not sure how many people watching realize how many players on Canada play on US teams and how many of US live and play on Canadian teams. They're playing with their friends. It's really so much fun and so much talent. But the fact is, even if you're friends, you are able to turn that off when you get on the ice and play with this passion right here, which is just something that the NBA lacks. I mean, I don't think it's going to turn around. The guys in the NBA are going to stop going on each other's podcasts and being all buddy. But hey, when you get on the court, when you're out there and the people paid money and they're there, and just like you said, Mike, maybe it's a kid or a family that this is their one chance in their life to see LeBron James play, and they spent their hard-earned money for that, and you're going to sit out. And so it's totally different.
Yeah, I would say in addition to that, there's been a dulling of the competitive edge or the dulling of the competitive sword, I think, within the past 10 years for sure. But maybe even before that, it's just been a slower process before that. It's just like these guys in the NHL, yes, they're friends, but their competitive level, even among their brothers, is such a degree that they forget about the brotherhood for the moment and just try their best to win with the team that they're on, regardless of who's there. And that's just what is so it's such a void in the NBA right now.
What do you think caused the shifting? Because it was there. It was there in the Jordan era, and it's not now. Where's the turning point, and what's contributed? Is it the load management?
Listen to this, Mike. Good question. When you were gone on Wednesday, at the very end of the show, we talked about this. Somebody threw out a theory saying the downfall of the NBA is actually pointed back to LeBron James as he has come into the NBA. And
I love this argument, wherever this is going.
Because, of course, he's been the face of the league for the last 20 years. But he has kind of introduced this new era, new age way of, okay, you're taking care of your body, you're playing, you have a high longevity, load management, buddies with all the guys hopping around to different teams across the NBA. What do you guys think about this? Scott, I know we barely got into it at the end of the last episode.
Yeah.
It's like the Moneyball approach, but for your career.
Yeah.
We got Jonah Hill taking over the entertainment value of NBA.
Yeah, the infusion, honestly, that actually is part of the problem too, is just the approach of statistical analysis and trying to approach the game strictly by stats. We've even seen this sort of infuse itself into the NFL too. I mean, you had Brandon Staley down at the Chargers just always going by the book of stats and like, what are the probabilities? That doesn't always work. That's not a great approach. One, for the locker room, the culture, and then also on the field. It's pretty randomized in certain
You hear
scenarios.
that, AI? You still have a use.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah. You can't account for the crazy of mankind. That's for
you need
sure.
Instinct in there.
Also,
not just
that's
the artificial intelligence.
What makes sports special is that's emotion, that human emotion, and something that you almost can't even put your finger on. You can't put a number on it or anything like that.
But going back to LeBron James, I want to give him some credit because when he initially came into the league, I don't think he had that approach. I think he was very much in the same vein as a Kobe. He was following the footsteps of Kobe as in his twilight of his career and everything like that. So his first stint in Cleveland, I don't think he had that approach whatsoever. But I think over time, people in his ear and just the cultural shift in society in general in the United States and all of that happening at the same time, I think people chirping in his ear started to get to him when he was so young and so successful and always there. And then when he made the hop to Miami, I think it was exacerbated. And then from there, that was the launching point.
Anybody's going to have that early in their career when they have guys they've been looking up to. Like you come into the league and you have guys that you've been looking up to and watching, and so you have someone you're chasing. But then once he's at the top, he doesn't have anybody he's chasing anymore, so you lose that edge. But the best are able to maintain that edge within themselves, like Tom Brady, like Michael Jordan. So like if Michael Jordan was in a situation where he comes into the league, he has people he's looking up to that he's chasing, then he surpasses them, he still keeps his foot on the gas.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that was where the difference was.
Surpassed. I think that's the biggest argument in the difference of greatness.
What happens is this is a great example of what happens when you leave the Midwest, Ohio, and you go to one of these coastal elite cities. You become soft. You go to Miami, you go to LA, you become soft. So that's
the glitz and the glam, man. The glitz and the glam really got to him. But like to Mikey's point, I think that's absolutely true. Granted, you're going to get a lot of the LeBron James fans saying that that's absolute. How could he not have been keeping his foot on the gas when he won X amount of NBA finals and continued his dominance in terms of statistical analysis and all that kind of stuff? I think what happened was he realized the influence he had on players and the league and the sport across the globe. And I think he chose to take it in a certain direction that wasn't in the same vein as a Michael, as a Kobe. And that may have been just him personally being like, oh, I want to be my own thing. I want to do my own thing. And I'm going to affect this change. Ultimately, we're seeing that it has ramifications and ripple effects that have damaged the game to a far, far extent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at the top performers or kind of the faces of the franchise, and whoever is that player at that time, they do have the power to kind of tip the scales and turn the league and the culture of a league into whatever direction they kind of set it off on. And LeBron has done that. So there is sort of an argument there to be made. I know it's kind of silly because he has been the face of the franchise and he has helped basketball become very, very global in these last 20 years as well. But at the same time, this culture, it is a problem, and you're seeing it in all corners, and it's especially prominent when we just see a great example in a different sport like that. It's like, hey, hockey, I know it's kind of a conspiracy, but hockey might really have the chance to at some point surpass the NBA.
So to answer my question, it's LeBron's fault.
Title for the show.
He may have been the catalyst. Yeah. Looking back on it, going back to what PK, one of the last things that PK said too, was just like, you can't show up in the game of hockey and just go through the motions. It's very akin, just the style of play. It's very akin to UFC fighting, boxing, football. You show up and you half-ass it, you will be hurt and badly at that. So once those players start doing that, then the NBA needs to foster it and not suppress it.
You know, here's the way that they save the NBA. They need guys like this, okay, coming in. This is the culture of basketball in America. Hart, okay, maybe he's not the most athletic. Look at this. He's got the Adam Sandler fit on. This is what the backbone of American sports culture right here. Dudes playing pickup basketball at the YMCA or whatever it is. Get a little emotion in there. So we all know this guy.
The thing about pickup basketball is the guys who live for pickup basketball, they're playing for something. Their lives suck. Watching pickup basketball is so entertaining because they're all out. This is the only part of their week that gives them joy.
We need
this guy's outfit. You love to watch him play.
We need the emotion in pickup basketball to be injected back into the NBA. It's just just too soft.
The only time he's out of his cubicle.
That guy works at Lumen Industries. He's probably severed, and he's coming back here. Your Audi played really well in his pickup basketball game last night. All right, speaking of basketball, we got to touch on this. Rick Pitino head coach, legendary with Louisville for like 16, 17 seasons, with St. John's now. And Scott, will you throw this up of Coach Pitino? It's about a 1-minute clip of him ripping his team at halftime. Let's listen to this.
You guys keep blowing opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity. You're like children with bad things happening. Instead of digging in and be tougher, you wilt. Where is your toughness? Where have you guys been raised that you're so weak mentally that you just give up when something doesn't go right for you? Don't you know what adversity is all about? That's the game of life, not the game of basketball. You don't get down when things go wrong. You dig in and get tougher. Your whole life's going to be adversity. Learn how to deal with it.
This is exactly what these players need to hear. And also, this is great for every single person on the face of the earth to hear, whether you play sports or not, because he just hit it right there exactly. Is your whole life is going to be adversity. I love this right here. And I think St. John's came back and won after that. What are your thoughts on this?
Nick, okay, what are your thoughts on this kind of attitude in the speech, like taking the lessons from the sport and applying them to real life outside of the sport? I don't think you get that same thing in European football. What do you think? Because it's like life in Europe is so much easier and so much safer that you don't really need to copy and paste that level of plowing through adversity into your daily life. So like,
okay,
you can't have that hard hitting speech.
Interesting. Very, very interesting, because I think there's something to that. And maybe that's why football in America is the most popular sport, because in football you have, I know in other sports you have other adversity as well, but in soccer, your adversity is minimal. In football, your adversity is very, very serious. You can actually get really tough physical injuries right there. Even in basketball and hockey, that adversity, and that translates. And
rugby.
Okay.
Scott.
Out on the rugby pitch. But you're right. Life in Europe is it's very cushy for a lot of people. And it's actually real talk. That is actually kind of a criticism that's some of the coaches, American coaches that I know here in Europe, who are coaching or have coached kind of the youth, and they compare them, the youth in Europe to the youth in the United States compared to maybe say a high school football player. They say the guys in Europe don't really know how to grind. The young guys, think about when you're in high school. You know how hard that was, going to school all day and then going to play Jesuit football practice in the afternoon and having Coach Potter scream at you, and you having to do tackling Tuesdays. And this just does not exist in the same level in Europe. It's not to say that players in Europe and young kids in Europe don't have any adversity, but it is certainly to a lesser degree. And there is this attitude here of, they got a lot of holidays also. Everything is kind of softened a bit, and there's really this balance, which is good on one hand, but also on the other hand, it doesn't form these kind of sharp, tough personalities that you see more often in the States. That's a really good question, Mike.
Yeah, I wonder too. It's really sad to hear that that's the case.
And let me just interject. Sorry to interrupt, Scott. This is just broadly speaking. Of course, if you're European watching right here, don't be like, no, I work hard and I grind and have adversity. Of course you do. But broadly speaking, it's much, much different. And in Europe, that kind of pressure that is put on young athletes is for a lot of people here looked down upon. Yeah. Sorry, Scott, go back.
Yeah, no, I get it. But this is what's so different about American culture. And people can always harp about like, oh, the American culture is it's too much of a grind to where you wear people down physically and mentally. But that's what you need. You need that level of adversity to really push beyond the limits that you have as a person, as a community, as a society, and as a nation at large. Like that is why I think America has become the dominant power. I mean, obviously that's talk about broad brushstroke or generalization there, but it's at the core. It's just what it means to be Americans, starting from the bottom and rising above all of the difficulties. And that's why I said it's really sad to hear that about Europe in general. And I know that like the 20th century Europe was ravaged and went through. Talk about adversity, dude.
That was adversity.
That's what's so surprising is they had the most real world experience that I think you could ever really have. Right. And it is so atrocious in the horrors and everything. So to hear that younger generations don't seemingly have the same drive or the fight or the will to rise up against those evils and or adversity is sad. And I wonder, like, obviously you say it's a generalization and a broad brushstroke and all that kind of stuff, but is there a difference between, say, Eastern Europe and Western Europe and how they view things? Because even just the times that I've been there, I noticed Eastern Europeans, Central to Eastern Europeans are just a more hardened people.
Yes. That's absolutely certain. Like, I've had a couple Serbian teammates here in Germany, and those guys, you just got to respect the hell out of. These dudes are grinders. They are all about it, and they don't have that, generally speaking, the cushy experience that a lot of people in middle class Europe have. And again, I'm this is just broad generalizations here, but it's like. Right. Mike, where Jordan and Cody.
It's because the architecture. It's more brutalism.
Yeah.
Yeah, the architecture here in Europe, it's a little bit too pretty, and so everything's just kind of easy, and you don't have to grind.
Yeah,
but it's like
look at Italy. It's too beautiful. That's the problem.
You can't grind if you
do anything. Why would I work? You're sitting in Italy. You look around. Why would I work hard? What more do I have to achieve? This is everything.
But that's the beauty. That was what's so beautiful about Michael Jordan is he was the greatest of all time, right? But he engineered the adversity, even if it wasn't existing. And I feel like we're losing that in our younger generations. Our athletes, yes, specifically as we're talking about here, they're just, things are so easy, especially here in the States. Life is so much easier than it was 40, 50 years ago, to a point in which like their problems are minuscule comparatively, but they amplify them to make them hindering and debilitating. And that's the problem, is like they can't overcome those small problems that they now see as massive dragons.
It's always interesting to see people who don't come from a rough background or really didn't have any or so much adversity outside of their sports field, right? You come from a middle class life, things are comfortable, your family's not scraping by, but even those people able to have a psycho mentality. Like a lot of times you'll see that from kind of people who struggled in life and they worked their way up in their sport. This is kind of the only outlet, and they are able to have kind of this real tenacious mindset. And that makes a lot of sense. It's also why if you look at which groups, demographic groups in the United States have been the most successful boxers over the years. It's always been the groups that are kind of the lowest socioeconomically. Started off in the early 20th century when it was like the Irish and the Italians, who were kind of the poorest people first coming over. They were great at boxing back then. And you get into when the Russians came over a little bit later, and then they were the boxing group, and so on and so forth. And so that makes a lot of sense, but it's always really impressive to me. That's why I'm always so impressed with somebody like Tom Brady. It's like, dude, he had a solid, like, I don't want to call it cushy life, but he have a hard life. And then even with that, he was able to develop this psychotic mentality.
It's almost more impressive. It is, because you just have to delude yourself. You're like, if I fail at this, I'm not really falling that far. Like, I don't really need to make it in this, but I'm just going to do it because I want to.
But in a way, you could look at it.
No fight or flight kicked in, and he's just doing it.
Right. It's like the you hear about this a lot with the New England Patriots when they had their dynasty with Bill Belichick. Is like they were clearly on top of the NFL. They were the team. And they were able, though, within that building and within the team and the organization, able to create this culture of we're the underdog. Everybody's against us. It's all going against us, and we got to come together here. And they were able to basically create this artificial culture and environment, and that propelled them to the success. And so I kind of look at it the same way.
The inability to be able to flip that switch and pursue the highest good and the highest ideal within that sport. If you're not doing that, you're not living life properly, and you're not competing. And that's just what's so frustrating. And I love the fact, for all of his faults, which he has many, and he went through it with Louisville and everything like that. Rick Pitino is speaking truth here, but his faults in his personal life don't negate what truth he is speaking about and to in this speech right now.
Yeah, super impressive. And look, the proof is right there. His team came back and won. I also like in that speech that he was basically like, he was harping on, hey, take your shots. I don't care about you missing shots. I don't care about the things that he was harping on were the things that you can control. Everybody can control. It was all about like your effort, going after rebounds, playing hard, playing scrappy. So it's all things that you have total control over. And I think that's a great takeaway from a speech like that. It's like, he's not saying you got to hit these shots, guys. He's like saying, you got to hustle. You got to play with heart. And that's a great thing about sports, is that's something that everybody, no matter what your skill or talent level is, you can take away from sports and apply that into life. Mike, that was a good question about Europe. That got me kind of fired up.
It's good to have me back.
Good to have you back. There you go, Mike. All right. Speaking of Europe, I know you guys are so excited to talk about this. Champions League soccer. It's going on right now. Football for our Europeans who are watching and are now really mad at us for harping on Europe. We love Europe.
Make them more angry. Let's have Americans talk about
we
soccer.
We love Europe. They're great. They're nice. But here's the thing I wanted to ask you guys about. I mean, we can get into the actual nitty gritty of that tournament a little bit later on in further episodes. But right now they're in the stage of 16 teams. And Mbappe had a hat trick last night. Really awesome. But the reason that I'm bringing this up is because the fandom and in European soccer in particular, they have, of course, soccer hooligans. And this is really kind of a notorious thing, and it's a huge part of the fan culture there. And it's something that Europeans, we've been criticizing Europe. Well, that's something that Europe loves to criticize about us in America, is our fan culture is not as passionate as soccer hooligans. I'm going to throw this up here, Scott, about the Eagles, okay? Because obviously the Eagles winning the Super Bowl, and Eagles fans, we've known, they've been known to get into some incidences here. This is a theory. This is an argument that the Philadelphia Eagles fans are the closest that America has to unruly Euro soccer hooligans. And if I don't even know if we want to play that video, Scott, it's kind of a lot of lawlessness and destruction probably. But I wonder if in soccer, the fans, the hooligans have to be so rowdy and unruly and violent, for lack of a better term, because the game on the field doesn't really have any of that. It's all finesse. It's all dancing around. It's like, you know who the tough guys are in soccer? The fans. You know who the tough guys are?
That's funny.
Football?
That's good.
Players. And so the fans don't have to overcompensate for the lack of toughness. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's spot on.
Yeah, that might be the best reasoning I've ever heard.
I mean, I didn't go to jail, Scott, okay, but I went to college.
Because you're not
so true.
You live when you go to the games, you're living vicariously through what you're watching. And when you don't see that passion, then you're like, I need this level of passion. What am I gonna do? You're gonna go out in the street and knock down light posts and rip jerseys apart just like that.
Well, have you guys seen? There's actually there's been studies that show that a man's testosterone will rise and lower based on the performance of his sports team. So it's like, we talk about this healthy tribalism and sometimes we joke about it a little bit, but there's actually a truth to that and a reality to that. And so when the fan is seeing all of this and his testosterone is rising and he feels like he got the best of the other team through his team on the field and it was violent and it was aggressive, he's good. He doesn't have to go light a van on fire.
Okay, well, with that study, what level of fandom is the turning point where your hormones are linked?
Yeah, where it's affected.
Are you a face painter? Are you a guy who wears a jersey? What is the line where, okay, now my hormones are tied into this guy's performance?
This may be the perfect time to let the people know that Mikey will be going on at least a year-long tour across the country, going and talking to fans of multiple sports, right? And this is the question he's going to answer.
Yes. He is going to measure their testosterone before and after the game. Hey, can I just get a pinch of your blood?
How do you feel about needle?
But I think there's something to that, because it's very rare. That's why we're even highlighting it right now, because the Philly fans are this unruly and close to European soccer hooligans, because it is quite rare. In the NFL. For the most part, our fans are not beating the hell out of each other and throwing flares all over the place. So I do think that there's something to this.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if I get it that the hooligan culture is massive in Europe, and there's a lean in factor here that when it starts getting some news media press, it's like the fandoms want to one up one another and continue to do so. And there's an element of that here in the States too. Like you got Bill's Mafia, which is crazy, but they're not killing people in the parking lots or anything like that. So there's a level of that, but I wonder, like extrapolating this and probably angering Europeans even more. I wonder, because there's been such a diminishing level of, call it, patriotism and pride in your country and being able to outwardly express that. I wonder if this is the only outlet in which they can do that. They feel like they can direct that energy strictly to a sports team, but then the manifestation, because it's suppressed in other elements, the manifestation of it in the environment of fandom is becoming, I hate to use the word, but it's toxic to a certain extent, right? Because they're not able to release it in any other natural, organic way that is been the way for forever, since as long as countries and empires and so on and so forth have existed.
That is a really interesting point. And it reminds me of this. So in Germany, it is, you know, how in the States, like we'll see American flags all over the place outside of businesses, people will have them outside of their homes. And it's pretty prominent and widespread. In Germany, you don't have that. It's very, very rare that you will see a German flag. And it does stem back to all the stuff in World War II. Right. But then come any sort of international soccer tournament or anything where Team Germany, the national team, is playing, the Germans do a total 180 and they go German flags everywhere. You'll see them on cars. You'll see them hanging out of people's windows, and you'll see people wearing German flag shirts and all this stuff. And it's specifically only during these moments when the German national team is playing in this international competition. So I think that's a great point, that it actually is, it is directed towards that. And that is the outlet for sort of that healthy tribalism. And that's when it feels okay and acceptable to show that, I guess, nationalism. I don't know if that's the right word, but patriotism. Yeah, more patriotism.
It's not a dirty word. It's a legitimate love for one's country and one's people and one's community writ large. Like that's what's so frustrating, is there just seems to be such this guilt factor that, yes, it's an outlet for that healthy tribalism that we're talking to, but I think because it's suppressed so heavily everywhere else in life, that the energy is so pent up, and it becomes, to a certain extent, especially with the hooligan culture, sometimes it goes way too far.
Too far.
Yeah.
Too far. No, that's, I mean, like when you repress something like that, then when it does finally come out, then it might be an overreaction.
Yeah. So I just wonder if that's, and I don't want that to necessarily happen here in the States. And I think that's, I think that's what's so lovely, is like you can have that healthy tribalism, that connection to a team. But at the end of the day, we all know that we're Americans. We all know that like we're in the same community. We're part of that brotherhood and that nation and everything there. But there's not or at least in history, there hasn't been that suppression of like, oh, I'm proud to be an American.
That's the beautiful thing about sports, that you can have that outlet, and it's healthy, and it gives people the potential for that. It's also so cool in international competition. That's why also that, I mean, going back to the Four Nations face-off, everybody was so gassed up. Everyone was like Canadians, Americans, Finnish people, Swedish people. Everyone in that tournament was feeling their patriotism for their squad and their country. And it's one of the best things about sports.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So there we have it. That's our soccer segment, our soccer corner. Okay, we're gonna dive more into Mike. You have anything to add on soccer? When was
I had a lot, but it's slipping my mind right now. So next time, we'll get it next time.
Okay, we'll get it next time. This came across, and this is kind of going around the rounds. Okay, because this is kind of floating around and getting the rounds on social media here. Will you throw this up, Scott? This clip. Now the question is here that is posed in this tweet is hitting a baseball the hardest thing to do in sports? And it's a clip here of Paul Skeens of the Pittsburgh Pirates throwing a pitch, and it's from behind the umpire, from behind home plate perspective, and it's pretty damn intimidating. So let's get into this conversation here. Do you think what this person has tweeted? This is Kyle Hamilton, by the way, the Baltimore Ravens, absolute baller. He does some pretty hard things in sports himself. What do we think about that claim that hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports?
Look, I I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the hardest, but it is in the top 3 hardest things to do for sure. And shout out to Kyle Hamilton, former Notre Dame Golden Domer. So he's got his head screwed on straight. He has perspective. He can recognize game across all sports. So the fact that Paul Skeens right now too in the MLB is he's on a meteoric rise, and the dude's got absolute gas. He throws, I think it's like 104 is his highest clocked pitch, but he does it consistently, and he's an absolute animal on the mound. Big dude. I think he's like 6'7", 6'8". So coming down at almost 9 feet at the top of his pitch. But this is insane. And I just remember playing when I was a kid, when you got into the high school level, when pitches started going from 65 to 85 or, low 80s or something like that. It was just, dude, that reaction time is insane. You almost have to start swinging before they even get the ball behind their body because it's so fast. So I would say this is up there, but I also think golf swings and, hitting a perfect hole in one might be harder.
Okay, go real quick. Well, let's touch on that. But first of all, real quick, who was the base? Was there any baseball player in the Williams family, Scott? Because Alfie always had baseball. Eric was a baseball player.
Eric was really damn good, dude. He's definitely the best athlete in the family for sure. Basketball, he was stupid good as well. So like literally any sport he played, he beat all of us. But as Mikey likes to say, he taught and developed Andy to be the athlete he is. I did the same for Eric. That is my approach.
It's the responsibility of the brother to maximize the younger's athletic potential and career.
Yes.
It's your responsibility, period. Full stop.
You introduce the adversity early on. They learn how to overcome it. Yes.
That's your only responsibility as an older brother is to maximize the sports career of the younger.
You guys,
everything else is fugazi, fake.
You guys here talking about your older brother expertise with one of you here sitting with one younger brother and the other with 2 younger brothers. Here I am. I've got double the amount of younger brothers. Okay, so I have the most expert, but you guys are right. I just wanted to make that. I do back that up.
Here's the thing with hitting a baseball, a fast pitch. Yes, it's one of the hardest things to do in sports, but it is one of the simplest things to replicate in terms of getting better at. The variables for putting yourself in a position to practice this are you need one friend that can throw a baseball, or you go to the batting cages, or you go to bat. That's what it takes. That's what it takes to put yourself in a position to get better at it. You can go every day for 10 hours to the batting cages and replicate this all day and get as good as you want to at it. It's the same thing as basketball. Yes, hitting a three-pointer is hard, but what it takes to put yourself in a position to actually get really good at it is all on you.
That is interesting.
It's not like football. If I want to get better at football, I got to find 22 guys get together and replicate these game scenarios.
I don't have 22
so that's
friends.
The difference.
I think that's very interesting. I think there's something to that because it's like I remember like when playing football, that was one of the hardest things. Every time we had an off season and I'd come back and be like, I haven't tackled anybody in 8 months. Am I even going to remember how to tackle somebody? Like you can't really practice that. That is true. This is very, what's the term here, Scott? Replicable. Okay. I forgot what I was saying right there. Oh yeah. Okay. This is what I would. Okay. So that's true. That's a great point. That when something you repeat it in your training, that does make it easier. Here's a couple other things I want to ask you guys. Okay.
Hold on. Before we go down this rabbit hole of questions, I would have to say the caveat to what you're saying, while I generally agree with it, Mikey, is that if we're talking about straight fastballs and just undefended 3-point shooting, yes. Getting the form down, getting the speed, the reaction time down, yes. But then with baseball purists, they're going to be like, you're absolutely insane for talking about it that way, because the majority of times people are not throwing straight heat down the middle, so on and so forth. There's movement to the ball while it's going 80 plus miles an hour. There are all these different factors that even if you try and replicate it, it's very difficult to do so from that regard, because so many pitchers have different skills and different pitches and all that kind of stuff. So it's there are layers of complexity to definitely hitting a ball, because look at the way this thing moves, dude. It goes in and out within a fraction of a second. And I don't know how long I would have to practice in order to even like maybe get contact and foul tip that thing, but it's going to take a long time.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's absolutely a fair point. But you can get closer to the fineness of it than you can football.
Yeah.
Think of the variables of football play. Infinite.
Yeah.
There's 10 pitches.
Yeah.
You know?
fastball.
Okay, I can practice these pitches so many times. I'm going to be that much better, that much closer, have that much volume under me for these 10 different variables than I would for the infinitely variables of the chess of football.
For sure.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say there's a more finite number of types of pitches and looks you're going to get, but based off of body type, trajectory, all that kind of stuff, that adds to the complexity of those finite numbers. And then on top of it, there are some evolutions over time.
All right. So Mikey, Scott, you're defending the pitch as one of the hardest things. Mikey, what would you say is more difficult than hitting a pitch?
Oh man.
Hitting a hole in one?
Oh yeah, hole in one.
Yeah.
For sure.
Here's a couple.
I mean, I do think hitting a pitch is one of the hardest things in sports.
Let me throw out a couple others.
Okay, but I just think that it's one of the easiest things to get better at because it's simple to put yourself in that environment to get better at it. So it's just it's the only variable is how hard do I want to work at this, because putting myself in the situation is pretty damn easy.
All right, here's a couple other situations in sports that we can throw into this discussion right here. All right, hitting a three-pointer in basketball, open field tackle against an NFL running back or wide receiver, open field, by the way, stopping a slap shot in hockey. I don't know if any of us have actually ever done that, but
I've taken a puck to the face before.
Yeah, I bet you have.
Yeah, that was in high school.
Here's another, Scott, and maybe because your mom was a tennis player, returning a tennis serve from a professional. A good, all right. Stopping a penalty kick in soccer, and one of the lowest probability things in sports, actually, at least in mainstream sports, recovering an onside kick in football. What else? Any of those jump out to you guys? Do you feel like, okay, that's
I think anything that has to do with being a goalie is one of the hardest things. Being a lacrosse goalie or a hockey goalie, you have to be a lunatic. I think that's got to be up there as some of the most difficult stuff, because it's not only so hard in reaction time, but also your life is on the line. I'm pretty sure.
Scary.
Your whole career.
I would never do that.
I would have to say, like, those are the easiest answers, because look, we're talking about baseball, we're talking about soccer, and the percentages of success. Like, if you're hitting 300, you're one of the better, if not a really, really good hitter. But that means you fail 70% of the time. Yeah. And so, like, obviously those ones are probably going to be the hardest, but just being a football player or having been a football player, open field tackle against somebody that has just insane agility is like good luck.
I mean, you look at like some of the highlights of like Lamar Jackson running in the NFL, and it's just going against the best defensive players in the world and making a lot of them look really, really silly. I think that's a pretty underrated one, is an open field tackle against just an incredible athlete. Like,
well, that's one of the ones that it's hard to explain to a casual fan who has maybe not played football beyond high school, right? Because they don't know the speed difference and the what it takes to actually the pursuit angles and everything like that. And that's probably why they stopped at high school. But like, that is a hard one to articulate to just the casual fan. These are more simple because yes, you have the stats, the number of failures, and then also they get to see that action every single time because it's so ingrained in the sport itself.
Yeah. So what about tennis? I mean, do you have any insights kind of, because I mean, your mom was a tennis national champion.
Yeah, I've asked her multiple times. She says it's one of those things similar to what Mikey's saying, is when you've been doing it your whole life, it's second nature and your reaction time is just crazy. And if you replicate that over and over and over again, like it becomes easier. But she says there are people who she's faced, whereas like when you're serving, like even some ladies, she said were hitting close to like hundreds, if not a little over when she was playing. And it was just like that, the speed of the ball and the blur, it's one of the harder things to do. And you're almost like guessing at a certain point. When you see it coming off the racket. And I mean, if I were to get on the court, I wouldn't hit a single damn ball like coming from anyone.
Hey, I can return tennis serves. I went against Matt Fay for years, and he serves very unpredictably.
Yeah, but we're talking about like, are you going to take a 120 or 130 mile an hour serve from like Novak Djokovic?
Absolutely not. No, I think Mbappe was hitting about 30 miles per hour. But I was getting some of those. What else? Back to football from your guys' experience in football, because the open field tackle is kind of a defensive one. Mike? What is the most difficult from the running back position?
Okay, before I go into that, I think that for football has the most like 80% difficulty things that you have to do versus the top 1% difficulty athletic. But it's just everything that you do is like 80% and above in difficulty versus baseball. You have like one or two things that are like
top
90%
1%
above difficulty.
Yeah, okay.
But in football, you're constantly at this level above for everything. I think from running back, I don't know, picking up a blitz up the gut against some 250-pound backer and you can't cut.
You just want to.
Running the ball is easy. Catching the ball is easy.
So there's an argument to be made from Mikey that running back is the most easy position in football. Thank you. Quarterback, which throw was the most difficult?
Ooh. That's another position that I don't think people understand, the timing, how important timing and route timing is. Like, you have to be on such a deep subconscious connection with your receiver to make those throws and time them out while also reading the defenses, because not only is the quarterback reading the defense, so is the receiver. And they have 4 different routes that they can run based off of a position of a DB or a safety or anything along those lines. And being able to be on the same page and then time that out to a perfect degree to where it only your guy can catch it. So a lot of the ones that gave me trouble were the timed out routes. So, even a 10-yard out or anything like that, unless there was super cushion, where you could kind of just, give it out there, put it to the sideline, give them a chance and all that kind of stuff. Those were really, really difficult.
Yeah, I think we have to talk about quarterback, because Mike, what you said there, that basically there's a lot of challenging things in football, but maybe not so many top 1% difficulty actions like there is with hitting a curveball or a slider or hitting a hole in one. But there is a plethora of very difficult top 20% movements. And when you look at it by terms of a position, quarterback has got to be the most difficult position in all of sports when you take everything into account. That's not to say throwing any pass is harder than hitting a pitch, but when you take everything into account and then also all of the mental aspect that comes into play, I'm got to say that quarterback's the most difficult position in sports. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would agree, because it's not just timing. I sort of cut it off at the knees there. It is timing, but it's about velocity. It's about ball arc. It's about all of these different factors while playing off of the defensive position and their capabilities that you've grown to know through watching film, and their potentials to make those moves in real time, like split second within 2.5 seconds when you're getting rid of the ball and everything like that. So there are so many layers and factors to just throwing a single pass in a play.
Yeah. So I think that's for all this is the shots at European show, but for all the Europeans who have no respect for American football, we have the hardest position in all of sports in our sport. Okay. I promise.
You can trust us.
Totally unbiased. We have 2 passports. We're European too, Mike. We have an Italian passport.
Yeah.
So,
I'm an Italian. Sono Italiano.
Talking from a place of no bias here. All right.
I married a dual citizen too.
Yeah,
So
dude, look, we have a European perspective on this, so we're allowed to talk freely about it. All right, so that's an interesting little segment there. If anybody's watching and has their opinion on what the most difficult thing in sports are, let us know, because this is always a conversation that can go on and on. I would like to hear some other points on that. All right, there we have it, guys. We're right about a good time right here. I know we're a little bit in mourning because the United States lost to Canada, and it was looking so good there for a while, but hey, there's we still won those fist fights in the earlier round.
Oh yeah. Look, we let them know we're here, and come the next 3-4 years, I think there's going to be a change in tide here. So they're on alert.
It's got me excited for the Winter Olympics next year, which they are actually in Italy. And Mike, maybe we go.
Drive your van out there, Mike.
There you go.
You're gonna take a ferry.
It's a boat van. 8 weeks on a ferry. You're like a 1900s immigrant.
Columbus felt like.
All right, there we go. Everybody, thank you for watching, guys. See you on Monday.